Hello friends, Jove here. Welcome to another episode of the Test-Driven Development Screencast. As usual, this video is gonna be continuation where we left off in the previous one, which means we are gonna continue working on the timeline. Just before we get started with the code, I wanna show something that happened today. Basically, I've reported the very first issue in the Friends repository, and that's a bug that got reported in the comments on YouTube by someone from you. And basically there is a race condition with the info message in the sign up screen that has to be dealt with. I have written here some description, but obviously that's going to be something that we are going to be addressing in some other video, not in this one. And as I said, for this one, let's make sure that we are green, and we are going to continue where we stopped. So basically we wrote a test in the previous video about posts from friends, and maybe it was a little bit we went a little bit too much before we started refactoring here on the right side, but that's not really a mistake, so that's totally fine. So basically we can start refactoring right now, even though we have this test, and then let's see how everything's gonna evolve and continue writing more tests and then refactoring as it should go. So how do we start to refactor here? Basically, when we have a situation like this, we have some bunch of hard-coded data, and then ultimately what we want to do is push all this hard-coded data out. Basically we want to push it up the call stack, in this case towards the tests, but that's the ultimate goal. But how we can do that is we can first start grouping similar things together, and then see what structure it's gonna come up with, because they're gonna tell us basically by grouping similar things together, we might even come up with some duplication, and then by removing that duplication, improving the names, aligning the levels of abstraction. That's normally the way to go. In this case, what I will start off with basically is I can start grouping similar things together and then observe how everything's gonna go and what that's gonna be telling me. So in this case, I have these posts and these posts here, this one post. So basically I can start grouping them together and then loading them from that same group. So something like list of, and I'm just gonna grab these and these two, and I'll assign this to, let's say, available posts. That should be of no consequence what I've came up with right now, because it shouldn't affect anything if it is not used. But basically what I can do, we can now start using that one. And let's see, so instead of here using the list of these, we can say I don't know, let's say available posts, filter user ID equals, say, team ID. That's gonna be team posts. And now if I run, it should still, there is no consequence because it is not used. But now I can do, I can replace here team instead of the posts and make sure that everything is still working. So basically, if you observe, if you are watching closely, what I'm doing is I'm coming up with something new, make sure that it is not nothing is affected, the things are still green, then replace the old thing, still make sure everything is green. Now ultimately I'm gonna remove the old thing and again make sure everything is still green. Of course, these are maybe somebody might feel like unnecessary steps. If you feel confident enough just to go all the steps at once, that's fine with me. I just like to do do the new thing, make a replacement, then make sure everything is still there. Cool. Now another thing that I wanna just mention quickly here is that I wanna do a little bit more of an intermediary steps towards what I want to do ultimately towards my goal. And I don't want to make micro commits here, because like I want to do like, I don't know, bunch of steps, maybe 5, 6, I don't know how many, but I know that I want to do more of them, so that if I screw up somewhere, I want to revert to the original state where I was. I don't want to, I mean, it's gonna be a little bit harder for me to revert. It shouldn't be that hard, but it should be a little bit harder. It will be easier if I revert all at once. So that's why I'm not gonna do in this intermediary commits in between. I mean, little commits for intermediary steps. So basically, that's first thing that I've done. And here we can do the same thing. So available posts, filter, user ID is Lucy ID, and it's gonna be Anna posts. It's still weird, as we mentioned in the previous episode, why Anna posts are the posts where the user ID is Lucy. But the thing is that we need to load posts from friends, and the only thing that we can do right now is just hard code it, and then we will see how everything's gonna evolve in order to make sure that the posts are basically from somebody that Anna is friend with. So I can remove the old thing, make sure that everything's still there. So yeah, we are still green. So what we ended up with is like we grouped these available posts together, and here we created a duplication intentionally that we want to deal with a bit later. So first of all, let's check this in. So I would say grouping the similar things together. Cool. And now I think it's time to come up with another test, just to make sure to have a little bit more of an evidence where we want to go. So essentially what I want to do is here I have a user, this Anna, that doesn't have posts, and then it only gets the posts from the imaginary friend that they are sort of following. What I want to do is I want to have a user that has its own posts plus following somebody who has posts, and then I want to make sure that all those posts are getting back. So that's just gonna be additional evidence about the algorithm that I'm gonna have here on the right. So let's create a test, and I'll say posts from friends along own posts. So what happens when I have posts from friends along own posts? Timeline state posts, and here I'm gonna say Lucy posts, because that's something I already have, plus let's say Sarah posts. That's gonna be my view model timeline state value. Let's scroll a little bit to make sure it is visible. And yeah, so let's now go ahead and create these things. So the view model is gonna be the timeline view model, and I need to do view model timeline for Sarah ID. And now let's create this data here. So Lucy posts, I think I'm just gonna borrow them from here. I don't normally do this, I don't copy paste a lot, but I think here it's gonna be just fine. So I have the Lucy posts, and then I need to create a user Lucy, which is gonna be a user with ID Lucy ID build, and Ultimately, I need a user Sarah, which is gonna be a user with ID Sarah ID build. Yeah, and lastly, I need posts that Sarah is gonna have. So I have a user Sarah, I have posts, and then I have the view model, and then action assertion. Okay, cool. And then here I think I need let's say post I don't know, post for Sarah ID, post for Al, and a post 3 Sarah ID, post 3L. That's it. So now I have two users, Lucy and Sarah. They both have posts, and when I ask the timeline of Sarah, I expect the posts from both Lucy and Sarah to get back. Now the test is failing because I get back an empty list, which is great. And now how do we make this work as quickly as possible? We come up with another if here. If user ID is Sarah ID, we're gonna be doing something new here, else do the old thing. Now here we wanna do mutable value is gonna be timeline posts, timeline state posts, and here we're gonna say Lucy posts plus Sarah posts. Now what are the Lucy posts? Lucy posts are gonna be available posts filter it. Oops, I moved it on the other side. So it user ID equals Lucy ID, and the Sarah posts are gonna be available posts filter it user ID equals Sarah ID. That's about it, but I think I need these two posts as well here, otherwise it wouldn't find them. And of course I need this one to be Sarah ID and this one to be Sarah ID. Good, let's run, let's make sure it works. Good. I would like to check that in first. Can load posts from friends along own posts, something like that. And now we can continue with the refactoring. Basically, as we can see here, there is a lot of similar things, a lot of duplication to want to deal with. So first of all, what I want to address is this thing here, like the Sarah posts and the Lucy posts when I get a user Sarah. So why the user Sarah is getting the posts from Lucy as well. So basically these two things, this Lucy ID and Sarah ID, they belong together. They have to be grouped together. I can, like, for example, come up with a list of, say, Sarah ID and Lucy ID, and that's gonna be, let's say, IDs, Sarah IDs, and then Sarah IDs, it should not affect anything. and it doesn't. And then here, instead of loading the posts this way, what I can do is I can say available posts filter that Sarah IDs contain each user ID. So if the user ID of the post is contained in the IDs that are related to Sarah, we'll see that relationship a little bit later, probably will emerge somehow. But for now, I think that's the way I want to load. That's the way I want to load the posts. So let's assign this to a variable, say posts for Sarah. Now if I run, it should still work. And here, instead of this, I can say posts for Sarah, and that should still work. Cool. Now I can get rid of this thing here, and I can also do the same here. So let's say a list of Anna ID, and then Lucy ID. So those are gonna be my Anna IDs. And I'm gonna load the post the same way. So I will say available posts filter Anna IDs contains each user ID, and those are gonna be posts for Anna. It shouldn't change anything, but here I can say posts for Anna instead. Cool, now I can get rid of this. And now I want to group this and this together. So I can actually cut and move this like that. And that should still work. Okay. Now we have to deal with this. So basically, I'm thinking how am I gonna represent? So basically, this Sarah ID and Lucy ID, as well as the Anna ID and Lucy ID, so they are sort of, I need to represent them somehow as a data structure. So what if I, for example, create here a class, let's say data class, following, where I'm gonna have a user ID, and I'm gonna have a followed ID. So the user ID is following somebody, so who is the followed one? And then I can say list of following Sarah ID and Lucy ID, as well as following Anna ID and Lucy ID. So this, let's format it a little bit better. This is gonna be a followings. Now Sarah IDs are gonna be let's say let's make sure it runs well. It's the tests are still green. Now the Sarah IDs are gonna be list of Sarah ID plus, how do I get Lucy for Sarah? I would say followings, let's say filter it user ID is Sarah ID, and then map it followed ID. So that's how I will get. So I need the ID of Sarah plus all the IDs that Sarah is following. That should still work, and it does. And instead of now I can basically replace this here. Instead of Sarah ID, I can say user ID and run. And I can here, instead of Sarah ID, I can say user IDs. That should still work. Cool. And now we can reuse the same. So here we have posts for Sarah, are available posts filter. So what if I, for example, move this one, because the user IDs are used here, not here. So I can pull Anna here in the condition. I can say or user ID equals Anna, and that should still work. And it does. Let me scroll a little bit so it's gonna be more visible. Right, and now I can actually get rid of this and the Anna IDs, and that should still work. Nice. And then I think if I just pull this one here as well, that should still work. And it does. So I can also then get rid of this else if, and that should still work. And ultimately I can basically put here true, because I'm working with collections, should be fine. And I can get rid of the entire if else, and that should still work. Cool. So what we've done here is basically we removed some, well, not some, but a lot of duplication that we initially came up with. So let's check this in first. So I'll say removed duplication. Now the first thing that we can do here, basically this data class that represents a following for us, this is important part, I think, of the app, because it represents, this is a domain model that represents a following. So I'm thinking whether we should, I should have, for example, a user and then followed ID to be IDs, rather a collection of IDs. Or maybe it's better to just keep it this way, like have a one-to-one here relationship and then have a collection of, like, for example, if the same user is following like multiple people, then have a collection like that, have an entry in the collection for each of that. I think I'm just gonna go with this as it is for now. We will refactor if it's needed later. So what I will do here first is push this out, because I dislike it when it's when I think I'm done with that model. I'm not gonna do anything more on this, at least not yet, not now. So it should be domain user because it's part of the user. I think it represents the following is related to the user. So let's actually check this in first, and then here, yes. Think introduced the following as a standalone domain model. Good. Now let's see where we are. So basically what we have here is we have abstraction here as we were planning, and now we have some data here, basically two sort of structures of data, like two collections that we have to deal with. So basically one is the followings, another is the available posts. One way to push this up the call stack or towards the tests is basically I can inject the available posts in the constructor arguments of the timeline view model as well as the followings. But the problem is that these are too low level of primitives, like they're just collections, and like injecting collections in the timeline view model doesn't make much sense. On top of that, what would a list of, like the list as a collection, what a list has to do with posts, right? So I need to actually emerge some sort of abstraction to hold those things and then work with them. But before I do that, let's see first if I am green here and clean. Let's make sure the tests are green. So as I said, we need to group things, similar things together, but also it's important to actually move the things closer to their usage. That's also something that we should always look for. So the available posts are used only down here. Let's first rename these posts for Sarah to posts for user instead. And I'll check that in. Improved name. So I'm gonna move this closer to where it is used. Oops. Yeah. And now as we can see, these two are grouped sort of more logically together. So the followings and getting the users is one thing, whereas the available posts and getting the available posts for given IDs is another thing. So I can emerge a method here, for example, posts for user IDs, and then I can inline this variable, and let's make sure I'm green. I didn't run the tests, and now I can check this in. Function to get posts by IDs. And now actually we can create an abstraction with this thing. So these posts, posts for bunch of users, the user IDs, I think they're gonna be sort of an inventory, something that we have for the users. For the users, we have user catalog. I think we have in-memory user catalog. So similarly, we can have a in-memory post catalog. And then I'm just gonna put this function inside here. And it should be of no consequence because it is unused at this moment. And if I want to use this one instead, so here I can say in memory post catalog and then post 4, and that should still work. So it means that I can delete this thing here. So importantly, again, I came up with a new thing, replaced the old thing, and then deleted the old thing. Only kept the new thing. So the tests are green. But essentially what I've done here is I am introducing another duplication. You may say where. Basically, on each invocation on the timeline 4, I am making a new instance of the in-memory post catalog. So that's a logical duplication that we want to address. So the way to address that one is to inject this in-memory post catalog as a, say, constructor argument on the timeline view model. But before I do that, so I will have to push this sort of class inside the class. So this is an internal class here. So I'll have to push it out from here in order to be able to inject it. But before I do that, let's see first we are green. Oops. So I would say introduced and in memory post catalog. Before I do that, I just want to see how this thing is going to evolve, because I think the both things are gonna work in. I mean, they are gonna collaborate together. There will be some collaboration between, because the users and IDs and the followings, I think it makes more sense to keep them in the users catalog, in the in-memory user catalog, so from there we can get the followings, and then so I'll have to push this one there, and then we have the in-memory post catalog, and then I think we'll see how everything's gonna go, and most probably I'll need yeah, I just have to see how everything's gonna evolve, how everything's gonna go, but I think because now we are running almost 35 minutes, about 35 minutes, I think it's gonna be enough for this episode. I think we've done a lot of things, we've addressed many things, and it was a fun episode. So I think I'm just gonna wrap it up for now, and then we can continue in the following episode and see how everything's gonna go. So thank you so much for the time and attention. I'm gonna make sure to catch you in the following episode. Thank you.